I'm Erin Feichtinger. Perfect timing, recording in progress. I'm Erin Feichtinger. I'm the policy director at the Women's Fund of Omaha. Like I said, this is the third discussion of our series, and we're going to focus on economic security as part of our work at the Women's Fund related to gender equity. When we lift women out of poverty, the whole community benefits, and that's why we're here in this space. First, I want to give a huge shout out to the team behind Raise the Wage Nebraska. This is a huge deal because of their work, and thanks to voters like you, our state just passed Measure 433 that will incrementally raise the minimum wage. There you go, Diane. Yes, we all have our signs loud and proud. It's incredibly important. It's going to make sure that hardworking Nebraskans aren't just surviving, but like have the opportunity to thrive. So let's look at some of the economic security issues that will be coming up during the legislative session, how these impact all the other issues that we care about at the Women's Fund and that you care about as part of this network. Family leave, child care, SNAP, and TANF, and housing justice as well. And it's our hope that after today, you will better see the foundational connection to these issues and find your role, whatever that looks like, in helping us advocate for these really important changes. Right at the top, before we get started with the panel, I just wanted to say that the Women's Fund will be stepping more firmly into housing justice issues as part of our economic security work and building on our success with LB 320 in past sessions. Women, particularly those who are head of families, are disproportionately impacted by our current affordable housing crisis. I say this word enough, you think I would get it right on the first time. And the ensuing consequences that this has on their housing stability. They're more likely to experience poverty than their male counterparts, and the economic impact of COVID-19, as we well know, hurt women and impacted women more than men in Nebraska and nationally. These disparities are even more acute for women of color and women with disabilities in our community. So women are more likely to experience housing stability, and so evictions. I will say women are evicted at a rate that's about 16% higher than men. And when we're talking about Black women, they're evicted at a rate 36.3% more than their male counterparts. So any work that we can do to increase access to housing justice for women and families in our community, and as well as prevent evictions and promote long-term housing stability is all work that is connected to our mission at the Women's Fund, and work that we're excited to keep working on here. And we'll keep everyone posted on the exciting agenda around housing justice in the Nebraska legislature. I'm going to turn it over now to our wonderful panelists, experts, all who have been engaged in the fight for economic security in this state for a while, because none of this work happens quickly, unfortunately. To share with us the critically important legislation that we can expect this session. We're going to start with Eric Saviano, who's Nebraska Appleseed's Food and Nutrition Access Program Manager, to talk about SNAP. Then we're going to turn it over to Brian Murray, who I call way too often, legislative aide to Senator Wendy DeBoer, to talk about child care subsidies. Diane Amdor, who's a staff attorney for Nebraska Appleseed's Economic Justice Program, who has had the unfortunate pleasure of wading through our state's TANF mess, TANF standing for Temporary Assistance for Needy Families. And then Senator Michaela Cavanaugh, who is joining us from Hawaii, which absolutely none of us are jealous of at all, to talk about family medical leave. So I'm going to turn it over first to Eric Saviano and let him talk about the wonderful world that is SNAP.
Thank you, Erin. Thank you for this chance to talk to everybody with the Women's Fund too. I am with Nebraska Appleseed and get to focus all of my time on food and nutrition access work. So SNAP, or the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, is one issue area that Nebraska Appleseed and others have been working very hard on for years and years and years. And there's been some very recent success, but we're looking forward to a legislative session that enshrines some of that success permanently. And I get to talk about one bill that really does that specifically. Hello, people from Hawaii. Okay. Very cool. Okay, so I'll briefly share a little about our bill in the SNAP world and be able to hand it back over pretty quickly, I'm pretty sure. So the bill that we will be moving with the help of senators in the legislature this year will, like I said, enshrine a policy change that happened in 2021 uh, from a temporary one to a permanent one. So it's a pretty simple bill. It's basically going to remove the sunset provision that would end the program in September and make it permanent. The bill that we're talking about is the bill that reduced and eliminated the SNAP cliff effect by increasing our gross income level from 130% to 165% of the federal poverty level. And that, in layman's terms and in a little less wonky terms, means that people can take raises at work and avoid the cliff effect. They can take raises at work and not lose disproportionate amounts of benefits with their overall income, and allow them to take better jobs and take increases in pay without basically falling off the cliff and losing resources overall when that happens. So in 2021, Senator John McCollister introduced and got a bill passed with a lot of help from the community and folks around the state that adjusted that gross income level, which is one way that people are eligible for SNAP, and made it so that more people can access the benefit, and made it so that folks can avoid that cliff effect. We've gotten some data, just some fun facts about how this bill has gone since it was enacted. The bill has actually allowed thousands and thousands of folks to take those benefits, like takes those wage increases and avoid the cliff. And they've also allowed 4,500 people or households in Nebraska, about 10,000 people, to gain access to benefits in a time when inflation and food costs have just gone through the roof. Not just for low income people, but for everybody, of course, in the room. Huge issue as we look into food security around the state too. So this is a bill again we've been pushing. Our neighbors definitely. Um, I guess I'll point folks to the chat, and there was a Snap fact sheet that we have some basics about the bill and some of the impacts of Snap. Our Toward the bottom, we talk about our neighbors. Our neighbors have done really good work getting this income level increase enshrined permanently in their laws. Number two, down there in the fast facts about SNAP. Lots of folks doing good work around us. Um, our temporary move is, again, one thing that needs to change in Nebraska and move it forward. Shuffling just a bit. I want to make sure I cover some of these important bits. Again, it's not time for taking action necessarily at the moment to make sure that food insecurity is protected through this bill. But once a bill is introduced, once we have testimony or a hearing date, there's going to be a chance for folks to contact their senators and get the word out. Make sure that your voices are heard, which we know influences our senators, even some of the more stodgy, less sympathetic ones. But stories and voices definitely influence our policymakers in Nebraska, and we're really excited to hear more people making their voices heard. So again, we think that the time is right. It's not going to cost an arm and a leg in these actually fairly positive budgetary times in the Nebraska legislature. So we're hopeful that folks in the legislature will find this as a useful investment to continue. And I think folks around the table, these voices are going to be useful to making sure they see that. I think I'll stop there and make sure that there's room for others and make sure folks can clean up what I just said with questions if they have them. So I'll pass it back to Aaron. Thanks, everybody.
Hey, Eric, thank you so much for that. And I think you brought up a really important point. If you didn't, if folks didn't know, we actually have a budget surplus this upcoming session, which almost never happens. And so programs like this that are critical for Nebraskans are very often defeated because it's just going to cost too much. And where are we ever going to find the money to help people get food? So we have an opportunity to really capitalize on that this year. One question in the chat, Eric, what's an example of 150% versus 175% of federal levels, like in terms of dollars? Are we talking cliff effect avoided if you make 40,000 for a family of 4, for example? So maybe just putting some like numbers on what that looks like.
No problem. Yeah. So the numbers that would change, that did change with that law from 2021 was moving 130% of the federal poverty level eligibility to 165% of the federal poverty level. And so at 165%, for a family of 3, that limit is 23,000. No. I'm sorry. That level is $38,000. So folks have to earn less or at or less than $38,000 a year to qualify for SNAP in Nebraska right now. And if if the sunset is not eliminated, if the law is allowed to lapse with the current law and no action is taken fiscally, um, that would drop back to 130% of the federal poverty level, or around actually, let me get back to you on that. I think it's around $30,000. I didn't put that in my fact sheet for some reason, but I have it another place.
Yeah, we can always follow up too. So that's, I mean, that's useful information for sure. So we can always follow up afterwards. All right, well, let's move on, keep talking about cliff effect and now why it's important to resolve this for Nebraska families, and pass it over to Brian from Senator DeBoer's office. Although we just saw Senator DeBoer in the back of a car. Hope everything's okay in Hawaii.
I've kidnapped her. Just kidding.
Okay, good. But yeah, I'll pass it over to Brian for talk about childcare subsidies.
Yeah, hi. Thank you, Aaron. Thank you, everyone, for participating and being willing to listen to me. Not everyone likes listening to me. I do, so I hope you all enjoy it too. In 2021, Senator DeBoer introduced LB 485, which expanded eligibility for the child care subsidy from, I want to be sure I'm right about this. So there's two things with the child care subsidy. By way of background, child care subsidy helps individuals afford childcare, which anybody who has any experience with childcare knows is incredibly expensive and very hard to afford, especially for low-income individuals, especially for working families as well. So before we introduced LB 485, it was you would qualify for the child care subsidy if you were at 130% of the federal poverty level. We expanded that at the first level to be 185, and then you are no longer qualified for the child care subsidy if you get enrolled at that 185% of the federal poverty level. Then you're able to be on there until you make 200% of the federal poverty level. The purpose of this is to encourage individuals to be working, take advantage of jobs and promotions that come to them, because too often we have families who, because of that cliff effect, they don't take promotions, they don't take jobs, they don't take wage increases or seek other employment because of that cliff effect that Eric was talking about, where it would cost them the child care being able to qualify for things like SNAP or the child care subsidy. And so we expanded that to be sure it happens so more individuals can take advantage of the child care subsidy, be in the workforce themselves. And that's why it's so important that we extend the sunset on the child care subsidy. We originally have it scheduled to sunset here in September of 2023. And so we are looking to extend the end of that sunset for 3 years, is our current draft of the bill, to 2026. This allows us to get more data on whether or not this expansion is working the way we intend it to do. Are people able to be enrolled in the subsidy at one level and slowly, gain employment opportunities, gain promotions, change jobs, and then be able to shift off of that? We want to know, is that actually happening, or do we need to perhaps rethink the way we do a childcare subsidy? So we want to be able to have more time to look at the data that comes in to understand, is the subsidy working the way we think it should be, the way we want it to be, and gives us that time to look at. As part of the 485 expansion, we had a study that's being worked on right now by First Five. And they just recently got some data, and we're hoping their report is supposed to be due next fall. We're looking at also extending the deadline that they have, so they have a little more time to analyze that, but not have it be too far gone. So Senator DeBoer really is passionate about this issue, passionate about childcare, and making sure that Nebraska has a good workforce, because that's really what this comes down to, is workforce development. If we have people who are intentionally staying out of the workforce because they can't afford childcare, well, that's bad for Nebraska. We have an incredibly low unemployment rate, and we have tons of jobs that are going unfilled because we just don't have workers there. And some of those individuals are choosing not to work because that's the more viable option for their family. And so that's what we're looking at doing, and we'll need all the support that we can get, talking to all sorts of members. We have, everyone knows we have, don't remember what the number is, but a bunch of brand new senators here in the building who don't have the institutional knowledge of this passing last time around. So we're going to need folks reaching out to their senators to talk about the importance of this issue and make sure that they know that we need to get this extended to help our working families. With that, I'll turn it back over to Aaron unless there are questions for me right now.
Brian, since you work on the inside, and we do have a lot of new senators, and we're heading into session, do you think that it's helpful for folks to reach out now if they are passionate about something like childcare or SNAP, and just say, this is an issue that's important to me, and I hope that you just start that first contact and just say, these are things that are really important to me, and I hope that you're supportive of it, and we'll be keeping an eye on it, I guess.
Yeah. So it's always great to reach out to senators when you're passionate about an issue and it's going to be coming up during session. And so that's always great. But always keep in mind that sometimes you might send an email the first day of session about the childcare subsidy, but we might not have a hearing for that until February or March even. And so you might not hear back from the senator until it actually is something that's in front of them. If they don't sit on the committee, making sure that they're aware of the bill is always helpful. Just be like, hey, I'm a constituent and I'm watching this bill. It's in HHS committee, which I know you're not on, but it'll be important. And be reaching out again when it comes up to the floor for debate, because that's when, if you're not on the committee, you're paying it. If your senators will always be paying attention to their committee bills first. That's the first thing that they do in terms of hearings and what they're hearing. And so that always gets usually their first focus. And so then once the bills come to the floor, it's important then to be like, hey, I emailed you about this way back in January. It had its hearing. It's on the floor now. Here's why this bill is important. Personal stories are always important to that as well, making sure that perhaps even, our more conservative members of the body who might be more oppositional to this bill understand that we are talking about working families, working Nebraskans. If there are personal stories that you have, or if you know someone who's willing to share their personal story, those are always incredibly helpful to make the problem more real in the mind of senators, and that this affects Nebraskans, that this isn't a handout policy. This is a workforce development policy. This is helping our families in Nebraska be better and thrive. And so reach out early, understand you might not get a response, but don't let that dissuade you from continuing to reach out when the bill's introduced, when the hearing is scheduled, and when it comes to the floor. Anything that helps get the attention of the senator is always helpful. But like I said, be understanding that if it's not on the floor yet and they're not on the committee it hears from, they might not get back to you right away because it's not something that they're looking at in the immediacy. But once it comes to the floor, they will be. And so having that information in their email and knowing where to find it's incredibly helpful.
All right, thanks, Brian. That is helpful because especially people just don't really know what to do in this middle period here before session starts. But I always tell folks I think it's important to, as a constituent, to let your senator know what matters to you and what issues are important right at the bat, because you never want to be in a situation where you have a senator who says, no one ever told me about this or contacted me, or no one in my district cares.
Mhm.
So it's taking every opportunity to make that clear is a good thing. All right, well, I will turn it over. Thank you very much, Brian. I will turn it over to the wonderful, talented, brilliant Diane Amdor from Nebraska Appleseed. Sorry that Eric and Brian did not get a similar qualification before. I will turn it over to Diane to talk about TANF, which again is temporary assistance for needy families. The good news about TANF is, unlike, I believe, Mississippi, we have not yet paid a retired pro football player to give motivational speeches to people in poverty using our TANF dollars. So and build a volleyball complex. So we're not there yet, but I'm going to let you describe where we are, and then also talk a little bit about child tax credits.
Thanks, Erin. I'm Diane Amdor. I am, you can barely see, wearing some Women's Fund swag that I got last year. Slay the patriarchy. Thank you, Omaha Women's Fund, for one of my favorite winter shirts. Okay. If your blood hasn't boiled today, guess what? I'm about to set you off on the topic of what is going on with Nebraska's TANF Rainy Day Fund. A little bit of context and background. TANF, Temporary Assistance for Needy Families, is a federal block grant program. It used to be called, somewhat confusingly, Aid to Dependent Children. It was an entitlement program. Then in the welfare reform of the 90s, it was turned into a block grant program instead, at which point Nebraska decided to rename its Direct Aid to Families program Aid to Dependent Children, which is what the federal program used to be called. Lots of confusion, but anyway, that is what it's called. The Center on Budget and Policy Priorities has some really good information on TANF basics on the federal level. And they also have a really good kind of one-pager, I think it's actually a two-pager, on Nebraska TANF spending that is slightly out of date, but still kind of covers the basics and an overview. And there's kind of a lot actually that goes into TANF, but the piece that I've been most interested in the past year or so is the part that in Nebraska is called Aid to Dependent Children, ADC. Which is direct cash assistance to very, very low income families. This is probably what is most commonly or stereotypically called welfare, like direct cash assistance to people to help them in a short-term maximum of 5 years in your lifetime, time of extreme poverty. And so the way that TANF works in Nebraska is that we receive this annual block grant of about $57 million. Nebraska has, I believe, never fully spent down that annual block grant. So that means at the end of the year, we have a balance remaining. We get to put that in what is commonly referred to as the TANF Rainy Day Fund. Every year, since we're not spending down that block grant, that rainy day fund grows and grows and grows. And for many years, senators have made proposals and advocates have come to the legislature with proposals for how to spend down that rainy day fund. Things like increasing the eligibility limit for ADC, things like increasing the benefit amount for ADC, eliminating the asset test, things of that nature. Every year the department comes in and says, oh, we couldn't do that because if we did, we would fully spend down our block grant and go over it. And then we'd have to use general funds to make up for this. And heaven forbid that we spend general funds to help people move out of poverty. So because none of these proposals to actually use TANF funds have passed or have been successful, the last time that we changed the benefit level was 2015, I believe. Which again was a time the department came in and said, do not do this or we will spend more than our block grant every year and we'll have to be spending general fund dollars on this. The legislature called that bluff, called the governor's bluff when he vetoed it, and did end up passing that benefit increase over a gubernatorial veto in 2015. But surprisingly, the department was wrong. That did not spend down the rainy day fund, and it has continued to grow since then. The beginning of the year, we thought that it was around $110,000. There was an interim study hearing in November of this year where the department somewhat casually mentioned that the rainy day fund balance is now $131 million. And there, sorry, I'm forgetting the links that I suggested sharing. There was a really good World Herald article that kind of summarized that. Also, I think our Appleseed social media team did a great job of tweeting that hearing if you want a rundown of all of the fabulous testifiers who were there, including Erin Feichtinger and an individual who received ADC benefits a few years ago and just was incredibly brave and strong in telling her story and the impact that this money can have. We're talking a few $100s a month for most families who receive ADC benefits. We have $131 million sitting in an account. The purpose of that is to be spent for the temporary assistance to needy families. And you've got people who are subjected to these sanctions, all of the requirements and hurdles and hoops that they have to jump through to get this money and to continue receiving this money. That you would think that there was just this tiny amount of resources there that, you know, we've got to squeeze every last penny out of it. No, there's $131 million sitting there that's not being used for the purpose that it is intended to be there for. I think that's incredibly frustrating. The department's plan that they stated at that hearing was basically, oh, we'll have a few new initiatives and things that honestly, they don't sound like terrible things to do. They do sound like they've considered this and have received input from people who are current or former ADC recipients. And I think that's awesome. But the plan that they have is not going to spend down $131 million. I'm not great at math, but I can do that math. And I know that this problem is going to continue unless we do something like increase the eligibility limit, increase the benefit levels, and other things that will have an actual meaningful impact on the amount of money that we're spending on these programs. Erin mentioned what's going on in Mississippi. The other problem with having that huge size of a rainy day fund is that opens it up to fraud. That opens it up to people seeing this huge pot of money there and thinking they can do whatever they want with it. And without any kind of transparency or accountability from the department on who decides how they're spending this money and where it's going and what information do we have about it, something like what happened in Mississippi could happen here. And again, we're not the only state that has this kind of rainy day fund. There was an article in ProPublica in December of last year that outlined a bunch of other states that are hoarding, I think over nationally, it's like $5.2 billion that are in rainy day funds in pockets around the country. Okay, I'm rambling a little bit, I think, but other helpful resource for understanding what is going on with TANF in Nebraska was an article from the Reader this past summer that I think just really delved into and spelled out like, what is this program and how is it being used and how is it not being used? So we are working on a bill for this session that would increase the standard of need, which is necessary to increase the eligibility limit for ADC benefits. And then that would also automatically increase the benefit level as well. I'm not going to get into how benefits are calculated for ADC because it's actually kind of confusing. Actually, eligibility is confusing. The benefit level is actually pretty not confusing, relatively speaking. And then the other really big issue that's going on with TANF is child support enforcement. So when a family agrees to receive or requests to receive ADC benefits, they are required to assign their right to receive child support over to the state in order to reimburse the state for the public benefits that they are receiving. So that means that non-custodial parent pays money. That money goes to the state. It does not go to the household with the children in it. Even after that family is no longer receiving TANF benefits, if that assignment has been made and there are past child support owed, that money goes to the state, not to the children. That seems wrong. And that is another bill that we have drafted to address that issue. Aaron also mentioned child tax credits, which, shifting gears, not related to TANF at all, but somewhat related in the sense that it is a way to increase the amount of cash available to families in need, which is something that is helpful and beneficial. So there is a federal child tax credit. It was temporarily expanded in 2021 under ARPA, but then that extension was not made permanent. So there are several states that are looking into that have already, I think 10 states have already adopted or expanded a state level child tax credit. And that's something that could be helpful here. There is a really awesome report from the Institution on Taxation and Economic Policy and the Columbia Center on Poverty and Social Policy that analyzed data from each state and outlined the child tax credit options that could reduce the state child poverty rates by 25 or 50% when coupled with the existing federal tax credit, which kind of just blows my mind, like to actually see that on paper. Like, what is the price tag for reducing child poverty in your state? Do you want to reduce it by 25% or do you want to reduce it by 50%? Here's how much that would cost. Like, that's an actual thing. And we have that information. And we're working with our friends and partners at Open Sky to draft a bill that would include many of the policy options that are included in that ITEP model, such as making a credit fully refundable so that children with families that have low or no earnings are eligible for the full credit, including ITIN filers, individual tax ID number. Is that what that stands for? So the people who don't have a social security number. So people with families with mixed immigration status who are working and are paying taxes can still receive that child tax credit. Adjust the credit amount annually with inflation so that we don't have to do what we did with the minimum wage bill and keep changing it every few years, so that the credit doesn't erode over time. Providing the credit in monthly installments rather than just at the end of the year with your tax return, and a per child credit. And I think hopefully in the chat we're sharing that ITEP Nebraska CTC report, which I hope blows your minds as well. Yeah, that's TANF, that's child tax credits.
Well, we
listening.
care so much about children in this state and on all of the babies and things. So it seems like a good opportunity for us to really demonstrate that by making sure that they're taken care of, that they're not living in poverty, that they have access to food, and they have a safe place to safe childcare and affordable childcare as well. So thanks, Diane, for all of that. And I hope we will send out the links to everybody too, along with this recording. So don't worry if you're like frantically copy pasting, but you will have this report, and that would be a great thing to take to your senator as well. If this is an issue that really matters to you, and be like, this is how much this costs. We know this, and this seems like a really good investment to me as your constituent. So speaking of senators, I'm going to pass it over to Senator Michaela Cavanaugh, who's going to talk, who's very passionate about family medical leave. It's an issue that's near and dear to, I think, all of our hearts, because we all recognize its necessity and don't really understand why we don't have it. So I'm going to let Michaela take over from here.
Thank you, Erin. Thank you for having me on here. And I really am enjoying listening to everyone else's presentations. And yes, I am in the back of the car. I tried to blur the background so that people don't get sick, because we are driving through the mountains right now. I am also here with not only Senator DeBoer, but also the other Senator Cavanaugh. So we are on a little bit of a journey here in Honolulu for a conference. So yeah, paid family medical leave. So first of all, for me, that's what got me interested in running for the legislature. I was working at the university, and it was 2015, and I did research on what the policy was at the University of Nebraska around paid leave, and found that it was very, very disproportionate based on your status as an employee. So if you're a managerial level employee, you had 6 6 months of sick leave that you could take if you needed to. So we didn't have short-term or long-term disability insurance at the university, but we had this massive amount of sick leave that you could take. So if you had surgery or you had a child, you could take the sick leave. If you were an hourly employee, you would have to work at the university for 5 years, not take a single day of sick leave or vacation in order to accrue enough to take 12 weeks if you had a baby. So that seemed wrong. And I tried and talked to lots of people throughout the university system, multiple campuses, chancellors, etc., and nobody seemed very interested in taking it up. So I thought, well, I'll just run for the legislature. That seems easier. And frankly, actually, I think it actually was easier than getting the university to change their policy. The university is now reevaluating their policy and are working on a new policy. And they have taken a look at the bill that I introduced last year to help inform what they're going to be doing. So hopefully the university will get that moving forward soon as a model for our state, which I would think would be lovely. And I will be introducing the same bill of paid family medical leave as I introduced last session. It is what I like to call the Cadillac version, worked with our advocates here locally and nationally to make sure that the language in it was really being thoughtful and diligent in how we are talking about this issue and how we are making sure that it's available to all that need it. So, thinking through what a partner is and not limiting it to some sort of contractual partnership such as marriage. And so trying to make sure that it was really thoughtful about how people's lives are different and be inclusive. That said, of course, it's going to be a long road to get anything moved forward. But one of the reasons that I'm so passionate about it and that I appreciate it being included in this economic conversation is that people can't afford to have children for multiple reasons and can't get out of poverty for multiple reasons. But it starts with the first day in that you have to go back to work after you give birth. And then you have sick kids and you can't take time off, or you have a major illness and you can't take time off, or your spouse has a major illness or you're the person that you're a caretaker for. And so we are constantly having these policies that are not compassionate to the people. And I think one of the things that is really important in public policy is that we should be leading with compassion. When we are spending our tax dollars on anything, it should be rooted deeply in how are we compassionately serving the people of Nebraska. And I think we've heard very clearly from everyone on this panel this afternoon, it's morning here, that we haven't done a good job of being compassionate in our public policy. $130 million just sitting in a TANF fund that could be going out to people as cash assistance today. They don't need the legislature to do a single thing. They can send money out to people right now. Our SNAP benefits, as Eric talked about, I mean, we're in an economic crisis and we're making choices to perpetuate poverty in our state. And Brian was like, you can't afford to be a parent. You cannot afford to be a parent in Nebraska. And we are constantly talking about a workforce shortage in the state, and creating new tax incentives and doing corporate income tax cuts. And it's not yielding the results of an increased workforce. And so when you hear your elected officials talking about how we need these things, push back on them. And tell them what people actually need, which is services. We're paying taxes not to subsidize corporations. We're paying taxes so that the government serves us. And I don't believe we've been doing that. Certainly not my last 4 years. We have not been serving the people of Nebraska. And I find it very disappointing, but I'm here for the fight. I'm going to keep up the fight. I'm so grateful to all the people on this panel, including our host, Aaron, because this has been a difficult fight, and I've worked with all of these people for the last 4 years, and this is really a spectacular group of human beings that care and lead with compassion. And so thank you all so much. I'm happy to answer any questions. I will take my camera off so you don't see all the crazy like jerking back and forth.
I think the camera movement is less upsetting than the fact that I'm in Omaha and you're in Hawaii, but that's fine. We can leave that aside. I will.
I
Patrick-
promise I'll bring something cute for Lola.
It's okay. I will say that at the top, when we were talking about how economic security work is related to a lot of work at a lot of our other work at the Women's Fund, right? All of this stuff is connected. This is also a concern for Nebraskans who are experiencing domestic violence. Not having access to leave or being able to take off work does make it really, really difficult for survivors who are already facing multiple barriers when preparing to leave a dangerous and abusive situation. So paid leave is super important. It reduces barriers, and it covers, and anything that we can do to reduce barriers so that people can get to safety is incredibly important. So that's another critical aspect of the conversation around family leave, particularly. Michaela, I just wanted to ask one follow-up question. How would you like advocates in the community and folks on this call to show up when you introduce this bill and as we head into this session?
Thank you, Erin, for that question. I would love for everybody to show up in every way possible for your life. I think Diane maybe said, or no, Brian said about contacting your senator. People sometimes will say to me, if I see them out casually, like, oh, I don't need to contact you because I know you're good on this issue. And I'm like, no. Contact me, send me an email so that I can say, I have this many people contacting me. So whether you think your state senator agrees with you or disagrees with you, you should definitely send them an email. And if you're able, show up and testify. And if you're able, show up and fill up the rotunda. And my colleague, Megan Hunt, when we're talking about women's reproductive health, has talked about just show up every day if you can. Block people's way into the chamber. Force your legislators to face you and listen to you. We're not paid a lot, but we are paid to do this job, and it is our job, and it is our job to listen to our constituents. And so I just think it's really important for people to use their voice. No change can be made in this state unless people demand it. And you, everyone on here, everyone listening on here, you have the power to change things. You just have to use your power. And I really hope that people will show up over the next couple of years, use your power, use your voice. It might not always feel like it's making a difference because change can be painfully slow, but I've worked with these wonderful people for 4 years and we've accomplished some great things. And I hope we can continue to do that.
A dear friend told me a while back, don't bring a spreadsheet to a knife fight. And I'm really feeling that energy a little bit this session. Like we've brought the data when they asked, we've brought the lived experience when they asked. And now we need to do both and show up. And I know I'm also reminded of what Anita Hill said at our Lead the Change event this year, where she said it's not a sprint. This work is not a sprint. It's not a marathon. Even it is a relay. So we can rely on each other. You don't have to show up everywhere all the time doing, show up the way that feels comfortable for you. And like, if you feel more comfortable, putting together a snack bag for senators engaged on a floor fight, or sending a casserole to a fellow friend so they can go to Lincoln, like those are all also important.
Offer to help with childcare for a friend that wants to come testify. I mean, you can send an email everything is important and everything is impactful, and you can find your way to show up. I do accept coffee. And unlike Aaron and my brother John, I do not care for the coffee off the floor of the legislature.
I mean, it's important. Brian and I were talking about the vending machine sandwiches before this started. So there's varying levels of awfulness. So again, just highlighting the importance of sending your friends who are coming to the Capitol with snacks.
Yeah.
So they don't have to be subjected to all of this.
Yeah.
So anyway, if anybody does have questions, I don't know if I missed any in the chat, but being mindful of folks' time, just a closing question for everyone. And then I want to encourage folks in the chat, if you do have further questions, like you can reach out to us at the Women's Fund, and I'm more than happy to connect you with all of these folks directly to learn from their expertise. So if you have a question later in the afternoon or tomorrow, or when you wake up in the middle of the night, like send me an email and I'll make sure you get connected. So the final closing thought, things feel, if you're like me, things can feel really dark recently. It feels like the fight is really enormous and overwhelming and complicated and sad. So I've been trying to be more intentional about finding some joy, which means I'm subjecting all of you to this as well. And so I'm wondering if you could just talk a little bit about, or just a thought even, of what's bringing you hope in this work. Like, why are you doing this, and what's keeping you here? What's bringing you hope? And anyone can jump in as you think of it.
I have sorry.
Go ahead, Diane.
I have a quote that I like from Miriam Kaba, who's an author and abolitionist, and she says that hope is a discipline. And it's not just this like warm, fuzzy feeling that appears out of nowhere. It takes work and it's a choice. But we need hope to do this work of transforming the world. And we need to have the vision and the idea that it is possible to. So hope is a discipline.
That's great. I was going to say at Appleseed, we do a lot of community organizing and work with people impacted by the policies we're trying to push in partnership with those folks too. And this year we're trying new things and building community within those impacted individuals in the food nutrition space. And I got to listen in on a conversation among them very recently, and folks are just opening up and sharing that there's a ton of peace that comes from knowing there's more people in the fight, and the people who are experiencing what they're experiencing. And our job, I think, as advocates is to make sure that more people understand that they're not alone in this. And so the work of including those folks in the rooms where decisions are made, singing Hamilton in my head, just is paramount at these times.
So this right here, these people here give me hope. Senator DeVore's face mask that says hope on it gives me hope. And the people on this call give me hope. It's really amazing to work with everyone on here and to see how people just keep showing up and keep doing this work. And we all cry a lot and that's okay. And we get frustrated and curse a lot. And for those of you that watch the legislative floor, you certainly have heard me avoid cursing by saying ridiculous things like baloney Skittles. I always say, because my mom's watching, and I would never hear the end of it if I cursed on the microphone. So that's why I say weird things like baloney Skittles. But I just have hope because we have accomplished things. And I think it's important to take a moment when we have the victories and acknowledge them and appreciate them. Sometimes that's not always easy because 5 minutes later we have to start a new fight. But it is important, and I'm grateful for all that I've accomplished with the people on this call today over the last 4 years. And I have a great deal of hope for what we can accomplish moving forward. It's probably going to hurt, but we're still going to do it. And just amazed by all of you. So thank you. And yes, Erin, I did turn the camera on so you could see this background.
Yeah. I'm gonna
'Cause I
have
love
to
you.
ask you. I'm gonna have to ask you to turn that camera off so that we can move on with our days. Thank you so much for joining. I'm
Love you.
I'm gonna let it end with Brian.
Yeah, so I have two things I want to share with this. One heralds back to the question that Aaron asked of me, and Senator Kavanaugh also touched on this. But in terms of, this is less for giving yourself hope and more so for helping the senators who are fighting for the things for you, which helps give them hope. Even if you think, well, they're my senator, I know they're good on this issue, so I'm not going to contact them. Senator Kavanaugh pointed out, always contact them. Always contact senators, your senators, if they're on your side on the issue, and always contact senators who are on your side of the issue, even if they're not your senator. Because on debates and on bills where there's mobilized mass opposition, the emails just get flooded with, vote against this, vote against this, vote against this, or vote for this, vote for this, vote for this. And they take the vote the other way. And they don't see necessarily that support coming in from the position that they held, that you all are supportive of them. So please, on that one, in terms of contacting senators, always contact those who are on your side of the issues. Thank them for standing up for them, because that's very helpful for them in their fight. For me, what gives hope? I love that hope is a discipline line, because for me, it always comes back to, there are lives on the line. There are people's lives who matter greatly and that are impacted by the work that we do day in and day out. And that's the drive that keeps me going. It may not always be the most hopeful days. It may not always be the bright, shining days that exist in this building, but it is the knowledge that we are not alone in this fight, that there are other people, you all helping us on this fight, and that, we should keep going as hard and fight as hard as we can, because people will be impacted by these policies. And that is a good reason to keep fighting and keep going for it. So maybe it's not necessarily, acknowledge that there'll be bad days, but there are a lot of people fighting, and the work that we do helps people, makes their lives better. And that's good enough for me, at least.
That's so true, Brian. That really is it, right? I mean, everything everyone said, except for Senator Kavanaugh's background, we can all forget that happened. But everything else, I think that all of that brings me hope. Working with all of you brings me hope. Knowing that folks took time out of their busy schedules, because we're all incredibly busy all the time, to join us to learn about these critical issues and figure out how they could be a part of them, also gives me hope. So thanks to everyone for joining. Our next public policy power hour is on Tuesday, December 13th. It's on repro rights. Access to sexual and reproductive health care, including abortion care, supports the economic stability of women and families, and the ability to choose if, when, and how to become a parent is central to a person's ability to have control over their own life and their economic situation. So we will work to protect against any further threats to bodily autonomy, the ability of pregnant people to control their own lives. So that's just like a teaser for the next public policy power hour, and not an explicit, no one on this call has explicitly signed on to support that statement, just to give you all cover. So just to conclude, as always on our public policy power hours, just a reminder that your senator works for you. And in fact, all of your elected officials work for you, from the lowly NRD community college board all the way up to your state senator, your governor, even your attorney general. All sorts of people work for you. So you can feel free to contact them and let them know that you want them to prioritize women's economic security next session by supporting all of the issues that we've talked about here today. So Thank you to all the panelists. Thanks to everyone for joining us. Just once again, we will send out this recording. We will answer any unanswered questions that we didn't get to in the chat. And we're going to send out those hope quotes too for you to all just hold on to when you need it, when the fight gets hard. So thank you everyone very much for joining. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon.